Welcome to the final episode of Marketing Tomorrow. I'm your host, Max.
Leon.
Today we'll be discussing privacy and trust within the future of marketing.
Today we'll be discussing consumer trust, risks, competitive advantage, and data usage. So the first topic we'll be speaking about, consumer trust. Where do we start?
How important is consumer trust?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've spoken about it before. Obviously, having the trust of your customers is massive. And in this day and age, in 2024, going on 25, like, it's essential, I would say. Yeah, so I mean, do you think consumers fully understand how their data is being used?
I mean, as a consumer, I can read the terms and conditions and the sort of cookies and all that sort of stuff. But does that really answer the questions that I've got in my head? Like, do I know what they're actually using my data for?
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many times, when I've clicked on a website and just agreed to whatever it said. It's usually cookies. Like, I think, as a consumer, I'm kind of got that mindset. When I'm clicking on a website, it's gonna ask me for cookies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I usually agree. I don't usually disagree, but
to an extent, I'm actually fine with them having my cookies because that means the ads that I'm going to be getting will be more tailored for me.
Yeah, I mean, the key word you said there, like, to an extent, how far are certain brands going? We just don't know.
I mean, one example of a company that prioritizes consumer trust is Apple.
Yeah.
They really focus on protecting user data, and they even use this as a selling point.
Yeah. Don't they don't allow any outside sources to access messages or even track people's activity, do they?
No, I know that the police wanted to get access to their sort of data, but Apple
to view the messages and everything.
Yeah, but Apple declined it.
I'm pretty sure Samsung are for that. So one of their, obviously, probably their biggest competitor. They're on the other side of it. They're just allowing, like, the forces to just access everyone's data if they want it. Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of, from Samsung's sort of view, I mean, I don't blame them because I know Apple are going through a lot of lawsuits and like they're going to have to spend a lot of money in the court and to sort of combat this resistance.
But then I guess if you look at it from a bit further away, Apple is massive. Look, we don't have a Samsung here, do we?
Yeah, exactly.
We've got 3 Apple phones.
I actually refuse.
You've got a MacBook. Like,
I'm getting the new one as well.
Do you know what I mean? We're not. It's just part of the brand. Do you know what I mean? As consumers and customers of Apple, we expect them to hold that standard because they've set it. Do you know what I mean? I don't think that's gonna go anywhere.
Yeah, when I was shopping for a laptop, I only looked at Apple because I trust them because of stuff like we just spoke about.
Exactly, yeah, and it's just usable, isn't it? iOS, I prefer it personally, anyway.
Okay, so now we've built an understanding on trust. Let's dive into what happens when the trust is broken. So how can brands prepare for potential risks while embracing innovation?
I mean, the straightforward answer would be just cybersecurity, right?
Yeah, of course.
I think recently anyway, I've seen so many different types of cybersecurity companies just getting active. Obviously,
it's one of the fastest growing markets at the moment, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, brands know how important data is to customers and they're trying to protect them. Clearly, we can see that by obviously that industry growing. But I mean, I guess it will come with innovation anyway. The world we're going, the direction we're going, the future of marketing and in the world in general is going towards more online, more data. And I can see more different kinds of data being taken from companies through different products. Obviously, Apple Pro, maybe that will have some different applications.
I mean, just AI, really.
AI as well,
AI is holding our data, and this is sort of like a innovative sort of way brands can adapt their business.
Yeah.
And obviously, if it's going to be taking all this data, the brand's going to need to be able to assure the customers that that the data is protected and that they have got teams that are protecting the security of their data.
Yeah, I mean, they have to dedicate a lot of resources to it, especially now, just to make sure they have that trust of the consumers we just spoke about just now. Yeah, I mean, so following on from that, like, what do you think the biggest risks for businesses are when it comes to like privacy failures or data breaches?
It is the hefty fines and lawsuits, really. Do
you think that's more impactful than the loss of trust from the consumer?
In what way?
So do you think a business would be affected more by their their consumers not trusting them anymore, or £10 million lawsuit, £100 million lawsuit? I don't know the scale.
Yeah, I'd say consumer trust is more important, because if you invest in consumer trust, you're investing in the long term. If I'm probably going to use Apple for the rest of my life. Do you know what I mean? If I had one bad experience with Apple, that could deter me from using them and switching to Samsung, which I will then be with the rest of my life.
Yeah, I can definitely say the same. If there was a massive data leak from Apple, I would
weigh up the options.
Strongly consider switching to Samsung. I used to have one back in the day, so I wouldn't be opposed to it. But
really?
Yeah, but obviously now I'm very comfortable with Apple, but that is one of the things that would deter me from carrying on being a customer to them.
Yeah, they've got to make sure that they're complying and they're not breaching any of these rules, because
they have those bases covered through cybersecurity, right?
Yeah, they have to adhere to the data protection laws like GDPR, which we did speak about a couple episodes ago, or the CCPA regulations. Going back to emergent technologies, a topic that we discussed a lot in a previous episode, one of these emergent technologies is AI and facial recognition.
Yeah. So
Walmart, I know it's an American brand, but I'm sure what happens in America usually comes over to the UK.
Yeah, Asda's owned by the same people.
Yeah, so so it'd probably be the same sort of technology. But what they're testing is AI to monitor shoppers. So using facial recognition, they'll be able to track the person around the store.
Oh, right.
And then be able to monitor what they're shopping, and as well anti-theft as well.
Yeah, if they steal. So if someone walks into a Walmart shop, picks up something and tries to steal it, and if they get away with it, have they just got a profile on them then, like a little?
Well, yeah, they'll have scanned their face, so they might be able to track back to when they're there before. It might even go out into the car park as well.
Oh yeah.
But what I want to get from that is there are risks to consumer trust in this.
Yeah.
Do I want my face being scanned in a shop?
If I'm walking around into shops, like let's say I just go London just for a shopping day. If I know my face is getting scanned in every single shop I go in, Westfields, obviously, how many shops are in there? Stratford, all these different places. If my face is getting scanned, it will put me off going to them.
I don't want these companies, especially if you're not consenting.
Yeah.
You're not saying that you consent to it. It's not consensual. So I wouldn't be okay with that. I know that there is a company called Clearview AI that is facing legal action because the way they used facial recognition to match to people is that they actually used AI to scrap data from the internet so that they can use the facial ID that they're getting from the in-store, and they are matching it to the data they're finding online, so they can actually match photo to identity.
Oh wow. Yeah,
but
that's
they're facing a lot of legal action for that. So with using a lot of these emerging technologies comes a lot of risk.
Yeah, I can imagine these kind of technologies will probably get into the hands of the authorities at some point.
Yeah, if it isn't already.
Yeah, it probably is.
It probably is. I'm pretty sure London is the most surveyed city in the world. So
yeah, it probably is. Yeah, I think
CCTV is everywhere,
yeah,
and that's only growing with.
Everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, like I think from that point of view, from the authorities, I'm more okay with it.
Yeah, to prevent crime.
Yeah, like I'm more okay with it. But if a random shop like Asda, I don't want Asda tracking my face.
I mean, it only escalates from the shop, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So once it's okay in the shop, then what's next?
Yeah.
It's gonna be your every movement is being surveyed.
It's a dark spiral. It's a very dystopian spiral that could take the world down, to be honest.
Yeah, completely take away people's freedom.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, obviously talk about the risks, it's quite negative, but what are the positives, How can brands positively use the data they've collected to benefit the consumers?
Yeah, I mean, I know a few brands doing it. You can name Spotify, Netflix. They're using our data to benefit us.
Yeah.
By giving us sort of insights on, with Spotify, like the Wrapped Up that we spoke about.
I was really looking forward to that this year.
Yeah. So I was like, I mean, I'm slightly disappointed with mine, but...
Are you?
Yeah, but we'll move with it.
Yeah.
But Netflix as well, I'm happy with them using my data because they're going to recommend me shows that I want to watch.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And I don't think there's a problem with that. Obviously, that data they're collecting it's not harmful.
It's consensual as well.
Yeah, and it's personal data, but it's not very personal. Do you know what I mean? What I'm listening to, I don't really care about that. I wouldn't be fussed if Spotify had a leak and everyone saw my wrapped up. That wouldn't upset me.
It's data that I'm fine with being shared as well.
Yeah, exactly. But obviously Spotify will have details, and Netflix as well. They'll have different kind of details and data of us. So I think that's where they have to watch out. But like, how much, obviously carrying on from that, how much personalization is too much personalization?
Or is there too much personalization?
Is there a line to it? Where does the line go? Do you know what I mean?
I feel like I'm happy with personalization, but I don't want it to feel like it's creepy. If it starts knowing data that I don't feel like I've given it, I'm gonna start being weirded out. If it's showing me data and it's recommending me products that I can be like, right, I was browsing for new laptops, so I'm getting targeted ads about laptops. It makes sense, but if I hadn't researched anything about laptops and I started getting ads about laptops, it's going to be like, right, so how on earth does it?
That's the whole Alexa thing. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, it's constantly listening.
It's constantly listening. I think we did speak about that.
Yeah, we did.
But yeah, that's definitely over the line. That's definitely over the line. Because then my home isn't my home anymore. It's not a safe space.
You're not secure in your own home.
Exactly, and that's definitely past the line.
Right, this is seeming a bit negative, to be honest, about data and that. So how can we sort of educate, as marketers, how can we educate consumers about how their data is being used and why it's being used?
Yeah, well, I think we mentioned it in one of the past episodes. I feel like it was the one just gone, but transparency, right? That's the easiest way. How is a company using your data, and how transparent are they? If for example, as we're just using Apple as the topic, let's say they came out with obviously their new Apple AI, right?
Yeah.
If they had a little interactive kind of slideshow, you know, when iOS 18 came out, I think that was it, iOS 18, the newest iOS, it came out and it gave you a little swipe through kind of walkthrough on
of course, I remember
how to use it. Yeah,
I think they've done that a couple of times actually.
Yeah, they have it on their Tips app, I think, as well.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
But if they had one of them for how your data is being used, a little fun, obviously interactive and kind of colourful, on brand,
brief as well.
On how they're using your data, how Apple AI is going to be using your data. I think that'd be brilliant, you know, educate your fan base. Yeah,
of course. I think people these days, they have a short attention span.
Yeah.
People aren't reading the long terms and conditions like we spoke loads of times.
No.
So I think an on-brand sort of like using their sort of fonts, colours, designs, whatever, on-brand sort of presentation on how their data is being used will really be able to educate them on how their data has been used and should give them the sort of security.
Yeah. So obviously we just spoke about how Apple could educate their audience, but how do you think any new technologies in the future are going to contain people's data or even be transparent about it?
Well, an emerging technology that I like to bring up a lot is the blockchain.
Yeah.
The blockchain is an open source sort of, anyone can view it, anyone can see inside of it. I think if they started changing these data models so that people's data was stored on the blockchain for their consent tracking, I feel like people would have a lot more trust. Even if you don't know how to view the blockchain, someone does, and someone is going to look at that, and if something's flagging up or the data is being used incorrectly, then people will be able to see that on the blockchain, and they will be able to sort of make people aware that the data is not being used right.
Yeah, an almost public source of
how the data is being used.
Area. Yeah. It's a great idea, to be honest.
A decentralized data model.
But then we have to be sensitive about what data is on there, because if it's public, obviously there's some things that probably we don't want.
Yeah, that's true.
To be able to
That's
view.
a good argument there. So moving on to the final segment of the pod, I want to dive into sort of how brands can use data and consumer trust to gain a competitive advantage. For example, DuckDuckGo, which is a search engine on the Tor browser, a competitor to Google, who really prioritise privacy first. So it's a search engine that doesn't store your data, basically.
Right, okay.
Gives you access to Google and more.
So there's no cookies on that?
No, there's no cookies. It's on a completely separate browser.
Oh, okay,
So you need to download Tor browsing to be able to access DuckDuckGo,
okay, right.
which is a rival to Google. Will people start using this over Google as people start preferring trusted companies and companies that store their data correctly and privately?
Yeah, I mean, do you think, obviously, like you said, that's a competitor to Google, right? So do you think brands will start to compete on privacy and like cybersecurity, or should it just be an industry standard?
Well, I think in the future, privacy and trust will not just be an expectation for these brands, but it'll be a non-negotiable aspect of every consumer brand relationship. It will shape the way businesses operate. Instead of just thinking of a product or a service or something, they're going to be thinking of a product and a service and how can we protect their data.
Yeah. It's going to be one of the same.
Exactly, it's going to go hand in hand.
Exactly, and that should how it be. I mean, I think it should be an industry standard. Do you know what I mean? I think you shouldn't play about data protection and data privacy. I don't think it's not something to be taken lightly. And the whole rise of cybersecurity firms and whatever, I think it's brilliant, but it needs to be taken seriously. Like it is something serious at the end of the day.
Yeah, privacy regulations like GDPR that we spoke about and CCPA, they will continue to evolve, but will a universal, global sort of standard be required for companies?
Yeah, I wouldn't honestly be surprised if we see that coming in the near future, whether it's
Government
global government
yeah.
like source coming out with something saying this is the standard, you need to abide by it.
Every company legally has to abide by it to operate internationally or even domestically.
Yeah.
So another way that brands can gain a competitive advantage using sort of data and trust is privacy-centric loyalty programs.
Right.
So these are, for example, like Tesco, like the Tesco clubcard.
Yeah.
They will give us discounts on food in return for gaining access to our data and sort of our shopping habits and what we're spending and how often we're spending and when we're spending.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because I didn't even know, obviously I shop at Tesco. Tesco is my preferred store. I didn't even know that they were taking my data to be able to use the club card. I just thought it was something you get when you just sign up. Like, I wasn't aware of that, and that goes back to what we said before. Like how transparent is it? But
it's true. I mean, it's a transaction really. Is that they give you the discount, you give them your data.
Yeah. And
obviously, I'll still do that. I'd rather that you don't have to scan your club card. No. It's not. You're not obliged to do it. You don't have to give them your data, but I choose to because of the discounts, and I'm fine with them tracking that sort of data.
Yeah.
Right, so to summarize, on the final episode of Marketing Tomorrow, how can marketers innovate while prioritizing privacy and consumer trust in the future?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we kind of touched on it before, being transparent, main thing. And I think we are taking a step towards the right direction with obviously a bigger stress on cybersecurity, and like there being a lot more firms coming along for cybersecurity is going to benefit the whole data protection side of things as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, aligning their campaigns with their values, so showcasing that privacy is a brand differentiator will really be able to help them innovate. Yeah. So like DuckDuckGo, like we were saying, how they stand out is because of the privacy. That at the end of the day, they are just another search engine. You can use any of these search engines, but because of their stance on privacy, it makes them stand out and giving that competitive advantage. So their sort of values are within the consumer's sort of privacy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that just seems like a positive, to be honest. Like, I'd much prefer if a brand was always on the side of the consumer, but unfortunately, that's not how business works.
Yeah, of course. But in like Apple, they'll fight legal battles for us.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Apple example is a good one, but at the same time, they are so huge as a company, they can do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Smaller companies or smaller businesses might not be able to do that. Do you know what I mean? They might not have the resources to fight as hard as Apple can for the consumer.
But on the other hand, they have got to the size that they are because consumers trust them.
True.
And because Apple are on the consumer side.
Exactly, yeah. This has been the final episode of Marketing Tomorrow. I've been your host, Leon.
I've been Max.
And I hope you enjoyed this festive episode.
I hope you have a great Christmas and a new year.
Yeah, and I hope you learned something from our podcast. Obviously, we put a lot of effort into this, and I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, I've learnt loads from it.
Exactly. I think both of us have grew as people just from doing this.
Really developed a lot of our skills.
Exactly, yeah. And that was the real purpose of this.
Yeah, was to educate those that are watching whilst also educating ourselves and growing our own skills.
Exactly. If you haven't already, give us a like, subscribe, and if you're on Spotify, head over to YouTube, head over to Spotify, you know the drill by now.
I'll be Max.
Leon, and we'll see you in the future.
Over and out.